Hi, this is Mike Benoit, and this is Tyranny Busters. We'll show a photo here of Ron Paul talking about Irwin Schiff on the Alex Jones show. I'd rather show you Ron Paul's photo than mine, so I can look at Ron and then talk about Irwin Schiff and how he's much like Ron Paul, an American hero. He was exposing tyranny in government way back when I first started figuring out the scam known as the federal income tax. It was a puzzling thing to me that people said you had to give up the fruits of your labor to live in a free country. That never made much sense, that I had to be a tax slave to live in a free country. And so I got some issues that happened to me in my life that got me to really look at this. And I was sort of put in the quicksand when it came to income taxes due to an event, selling of a house, that later became a tax-free issue. But it got me so stuck in the quicksand that there was no way out. So I started to dig in and say, how could you live in a free country that has a constitutional amendment that says that involuntary servitude can exist unless the punishment of a crime? So I got a hold of material from people like Irwin Schiff, and this is the early 90s. I got a hold of material from Otto Skinner, who's passed away a long time ago as well, and many other people in the anti-tax tyranny movement. And I tell you, I really poured through their material, and that tyranny upon my mind kept snapping in. It's like, yeah, there must be a law that requires you to pay an income tax. How in the heck could there not be such a law and have all these people believing and thinking that they have to pay an income tax? There must be a law. Well, with everything I learned from Otto Skinner and Irwin Schiff, probably most of the stuff I learned from them, of course, people like Lynn Meredith and books like Eagles and Vultures Clothing. But Irwin Schiff, what was it? The Federal Mafia and the Income Tax Scam, the Great Income Tax Scam, something like that. Oh, the Great Income Tax Hoax. Well, I poured through hundreds of books and thousands and thousands of hours on this. Even came up with my own book, Tyranny Busters. It's modeled on the Tyranny Busters, the sham and shame of the federal income tax, and it's modeled under the works of, or under the guise of the same framework as Frederick Bastiat's book, The Law. So short, concise, and of course I pulled a lot of things from Otto Skinner and Irwin Schiff. Even had a conversation with Irwin when he had his radio program in Las Vegas. And there was a few things, of course, I didn't agree with him on. I was his equal in understanding of these tax laws, and I am today, or let's say the lack thereof tax laws. And I asked him why he encouraged people to file zero returns, because these were forms, these were taxpayer forms. And isn't the argument ultimately, are you a taxpayer, someone that's subject to an Internal Revenue Code tax? That's the definition of taxpayer when it comes to federal taxes. One word, taxpayer, and it's someone who is subject to or liable for an Internal Revenue Code tax. And of course, in the anti-tax tyranny movement, we want to find out just where is the tax imposed and then where are you made liable for that tax. And of course, if you had the answer to that, you could determine whether it was a direct tax or an indirect tax. Well, we don't get the answer to that. And who should we be most mad at? We talk about the government killing Irwin Schiff, but you know what? It's everybody that's involved in this, from the judges, the people that sentence people like Irwin Schiff, to the juries that sit there and convict, and nobody. It's like, prove that he's a witch, prove that she's a witch. Well, somebody said she's a witch, and we got to kill witches. The real tyranny, the real evil is the people that carry out this stuff and people working at that prison. I mean, how can you have such a job? How can you have such a job where you're the employer of people and you force them to sign a form that says they're a tax slave, and then you send that into your government and say these guys are tax slaves. They signed this form here. See, they signed it willingly to say they're a tax slave, and you can't bother. And how many millions of Americans are filing these tax returns without ever once asking the government, where is the law that requires me to do this? And so what's really sad is the people that were standing up and fighting against this tyranny were a lot more and a lot stronger in the early 90s when Irwin Schiff was active, when Otto Skinner was active. Now it's almost like people have subjected themselves to this chains of slavery and the chains of dependency, and they don't do anything. The government didn't put me in prison yet. Probably that's something in their on their agenda. And I say the government, but I mean these evil actors that are within it. They certainly did steal my home. And no, for not taxes I owed. For taxes they manufactured. For penalties and interest they manufactured. And no, there wasn't a jury that said, yeah, this guy owes taxes, take his house. No, the judges conveniently deny you trial by jury, or they did in my case, and they do this all over the country, saying there is no disagreement in the facts. Mr. Benoit just disagrees on the law. No, I disagree in the facts, and I'd like to see the law, of course. And in my case, I almost got the magistrate judge to demand from the government that they show the law. In fact, he did. But guess what? They came back with an answer. There wasn't an answer to that interrogatory. And the judge accepted it because he knew if he made him if he forced them to come up with the law, then guess what? The whole thing would come tumbling down. So my tribute to Irwin Schiff is, Irwin, thanks for all your help. Thanks for all the knowledge. I continue the battle. You are truly an American hero. I don't say was, because you still are, just as Ron Paul is. Thanks. See you soon.